Welcome everyone to this BCS Agile Methods Specialist Group event. This is our March session for you all. Really excited about this one. It's a really great topic and one that I'd imagine most of us find ourselves concerned with fairly regularly, I would have thought. Just the usual sort of intros and formalities. For those who don't know me, I'm Sath Pal Singh. Because me Sath, I'm chair of BCS Agile Methods. I'm joined by a number of my fellow committee members. We've got Martin. Martin, give us a wave. So we can see there's David. So Martin's our early careers advocate. David is our inclusion officer. And you can't see Ahmad at the moment because he's actually walking back to his place. He's on the move. He's actually in Mexico. Can you believe that? So he's off camera because he was showing off with the palm trees and whatnot. So he'll be with us in a sec, and he's our treasurer, for those of you who don't know. A few other members of our team might join shortly. Code of conduct, pretty simple. As always, we just ask you to be respectful to one another. Want everyone to have a great experience. So yeah, let's all be nice to one another. Q&A, we'll have plenty of time for questions after our speakers deliver the session. So yeah, don't be worrying about that. If you do have questions come up in your mind as you go, feel free to drop them in the chat. That way we can see them. It helps to prefix them with a Q so we can spot them, and then when we get to the Q&A, we can relay them back to the speaker. And if we've got any announcements, etc. at the end, we'll cover that off as we bring the session to a close. And with that, I'm really pleased to welcome David Spinks to BCS Agile Methods. Many of us in the committee know David. We know his work. We've been on courses with him. We've had the pleasure of his company. He's a very experienced coach and trainer. He's been doing this quite some years. He's both involved in Scrum.org and Kanban, which is great. Been a big fan of both. And I did have the pleasure of being on a professional. It was a professional. There was professional Scrum and Kanban, wasn't it? We did with Dan Vacanti. Yeah, and that was a good experience. So yes, David's well known to us, and he's written a number of books as well, as you might know, and most recently one on facilitation for Scrum teams, which is really what brings us all together for this session. So really thrilled to have him here, and really looking forward to what he's going to cover. So without further ado, really, welcome, David. And, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much, Sath. I'm just going to drop into the chat a link to Mural. We are going to do some interactions tonight. Don't worry, I'm not going to embarrass anybody, or we're not going to breakout rooms or anything like that. So some lightweight facilitation that we'll really employ during the session today. So if you're going to enter the Mural, if you enter it as a visitor, please, if you get that option, and you'll be assigned a random animal as you join if you've not used Mural before. It is random, by the way, so please don't take it personally if you get like a snail or a slug or something like that. So give you a few moments to join. All right, so I'll just share my screen. Hopefully you can see my presentation. In the Mural, I have replicated the presentation slide so you can follow along there. When it comes to the interaction, I will summon you to the right areas, or you can just follow along on screen. I will try to move everybody to the right part of the Mural as we go as well, but there's a good chance I will forget to do that, but I'll do my best. So anyway, welcome to my talk, Facilitating with Purpose. Thank you so much for joining. I'm joining you from the south of Spain at the moment. I see that we've got a few people from windy and wet UK. So it's wet and windy in Spain as well. The thing is, our houses are not they're not designed for the cold, so hence why I'm wearing quite a thick fleece today. So yeah, we'll knit together. So we're going to talk about facilitating with purpose. Before I start, I want to give special thanks to Patricia Kong from Scrum.org, who enabled me and let me use and adapt some of her presentation materials as well, so that I can share it with you. And my partner at my company, Red Tangerine Gladia Califano, who also supported me with some of the content today. Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit more about me. So thanks again to Sath for the introduction. So my background is in Agile and software development. I began as a software developer back in 2001. I am older than I look, so I've been doing this for a little while. I got into Agile in 2012 when I became a Scrum Master. Somehow I managed to get a team leader job, and in my very first week, the organization I was at decided to adopt Scrum and sent us all on Scrum training. So it wasn't really something that I was seeking out. It kind of found me, but when it happened, I feel like I've kind of found my professional calling, if you like. So since that time, I worked with lots of different teams, lots of different organizations, adopting different agile ways of working, Scrum, XP practices, Kanban. I've worked in lots of different industries, including e-commerce, social housing, education, finance, lots of different areas. And I've been a trainer for the last 5 or 6 years or so. So that's a trainer with Kanban University and also a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org as well. As Seth mentioned, I've written a few books. A book called Adopting Agile Across Borders. This was based on some research that I did with my business partner, where we looked at how Agile has been adopted in different parts of the world. What impact does culture have on Agile? We also wrote a book called Mastering Collaboration in the Product Team. This is an introduction to different techniques that we can use in teams to help them work together in order to provide valuable products. And the latest book, Facilitating Professional Scrum Teams, I've got a copy next to me here. Beautiful orange and yellow sort of cover there. So yeah, this is the latest book that came out at the back end of last year, and probably the reason that I was invited to come along to the talk tonight. And I've mentioned that I founded a company called Red Tangerine. That this is the company through which I offer my training and consulting services. So that's enough about me. You can see my LinkedIn and my email there as well. So feel free to reach out and connect if you like. Okay, so let's move on and get into the details. That's enough about me. We're going to kick things off with a little activity. The subject of tonight is facilitation. I want you to think about what is your worst experience of facilitation? What are the worst possible ideas you can think of for bad facilitation? What could a facilitator do to ruin a meeting or a group interaction? Think about your ideas, and I want you to add them to the mule. The space, I'm just summoning everybody. If you're using the outline, it's number 4 on the outline, but I've just summoned everybody that's joined the mule. I am going to give you 2 minutes to add your thoughts to the board. What are examples of bad facilitation? What can we do as facilitators to ruin a meeting? 2 minutes on the clock. We've got plenty of post-it notes, don't worry. So get as many ideas on there as you can think of.
I've just reposted the mural link for anyone who maybe joined moments after we previously shared it. So sorry about that.
Thanks, Seth. Few more seconds on this. Some good, bad ideas coming up there. couple of jumped out at me, not supplying cake, threatening participants. Yep, had some fun with this one as well, so that's good. All right, wrap up. Let's finish the post-it note that you're working on. Now what I want us to do, we've generated a lot of ideas there. What we need to do now is to organize all of these post-it notes. We're going to do something called an affinity map. So if you've not done affinity mapping before, this is a simple way of organizing our notes into groups. So what I want you to do is we're looking for themes, we're looking for groups, we're looking for where any of our post-it notes kind of belong to each other. I want you to start moving them into groups. Now, a few constraints around this. Anybody can move any note, so you don't just have to stick to your own. This is not, didn't say go yet, didn't say go. I can see me, I did not say go. So hold on. So constraints, anybody can move any notes. This is not a discussion, so we're going to do this silently. Once we've moved them, I'm going to give each group a title, and then we're going to review the contents. So that's part one. So I'm now going to say go. Let's affinity map, move things into groups. Okay, I can see some groups forming. I'm going to start giving them titles on red post-it notes, just so we know which ones are mine. So this one on the left-hand side, we got things around not facilitating the process, creating an environment participants do not feel able to participate. So I'm going to say lack of participation for this one. What else have we got? Everything's sort of moving over to the right there. So let's call this one, make that one a red one as well. If you are, again, help me out, if you see an obvious name for the group, just start adding a red post-it note near the group, just so we can identify the group. Okay, I think this one is, there's one there around, yep, so I think we've got a theme around lack of participation / listing. Okay, failure to plan, yep, that's definitely a group. Communication. Oops, I think we've got one around time management as well. So I'm going to add a red post-it for that. Time management. Of inclusion. Okay, nice. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3. We've got 5 groups that kind of emerged here. That's good enough for me to make my point. Last thing that we're going to do. So out of those main categories, so poor communication, let's call that, failure to plan, lack of participation, lack of listening, time management. I think those are our main categories. I'm gonna open a voting session in Mural. Everybody gets 2 votes each. You're only going to vote, you need to click on the red sticky note. So what do you think is the best example of poor facilitation? Is it poor communication? Is it a lack of planning? Is it poor time management? Is it being exclusive, or is it that lack of enabling participation? So I'm going to open a voting session. Vote on your red stickies that you think represents the best, worst way of facilitating. Give me 1 second to set up the votes. Okay. 1 second. All right, I declare the voting session open. I will put a time restriction on the voting. So which of these behaviors, which of these ways of behaving
Sorry,
represents?
David, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do to cast a vote.
You just have to click on a red sticker.
Okay.
So just clicking on the red stickers and that will cast your vote. Be careful where you click. If you click on anything else, then you could be throwing your vote away.
Is it 2 votes per person?
2 votes per person, yep. You can vote on 2 stickies. You can put both of your votes on the same one if you want to as well.
Perfect.
So if you really feel strongly about one, you can put both your votes on the same one.
How do I see the votes? I can't see, I only see you and I see your slide, but I can't see anything else.
Are you not on mute? Okay, so I'll put it on the screen. So this is what we're looking at. It might be if you joined a little bit late, you might not have joined the meal. So
I see.
yeah. So this is what we've created so far. If you've not joined, we were looking at bad ideas of or ideas that mean that we've got poor facilitation. So our reds are our groups. Okay, I am going to close the voting session, and our winner of the worst possible facilitation is communication. So poor communication. As a group, we think this is our outcome of the discussion or our question. What is the worst way to facilitate? Have poor communication. Okay, good. There is a point to this. I will get onto it. But now that we've talked about poor ways to facilitate, now let's talk about best possible facilitation. What are ideas that you can think of that makes for great facilitation? What can a facilitator do to make a meeting successful? Now I'm going to summon you to a different part of the mural. And this is on number 7 on the outline. Let me summon you if you're not there. This is what you should be seeing. So again, add your post-it notes, double click, we'll create a post-it notes. And I'm looking to you to come up with ideas that helps facilitation. Add your thoughts to the board now. If you're not got access to the mural, we'll share the link again in the chat so you can add your thoughts as well. Again, you might want to look at some of the bad ideas that we just had, and maybe we can flip those on their head. Okay, I'm going to put a 1-minute timer on this, just so that we keep on track. Lots of ideas coming up. Good, good, good. Lots of post-it notes. Same thing we're going to do again. We're going to affinity map. So I'd now like you to add and organize all of these post-it notes into groups again, please. Let's affinity map this. Can we form all this data into different groups? And again, if we can give the different groups a title as they emerge, let's use the big red virtual sticky again to distinguish the groups. You might be regretting adding so many post-it notes as a team because there's a lot to sort here, but it's good. I see the cake made another appearance. Bring cake, yep. There's not many facilitation problems you can't solve with a good bit of cake, right? Okay. Good listening skills. I see that has emerged as a group. That's good. I think there's one on the right-hand side around structure, maybe. So I'm going to add that as a group. Yeah, we got another group emerging about time management and flow. I see there's something about coffee as well as cake, so I'm gonna maybe put something about look after the humans. I'm gonna call that group. Yeah, we got another red one emerging about inclusion, inclusivity, I see over there. Okay, a few more seconds to organize this and see if any more groups emerge. Yep, someone is changing, was thinking of changing my title for the humans one, but that's fine, that's fine. I think we're just about there with our main categories. Right, so our categories are good listening skills, time management and focus, well-structured, inclusive, look after the humans. Again, voting session, 2 votes each. You're voting on the red stickers. Again, you can use both of your votes on the same one. You can spread them around, 2 votes each. What do you think is the most important aspect, behavior for good facilitation? You start the voting session. And I need to expand it so we get those ones over there. 1 second. All right, I should have everything in that window. Right, I'm starting the voting session now. Okay. Votes are coming out. I'm going to end it in a few seconds, 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to declare the vote finished and let's see what the winner is. What is the best possible way to facilitate? And our answer to that question is facilitation. The best key skill, the best behavior is having good structure, well-structured facilitation. So that was our winner as a group. Okay, thank you so much for taking part in that. I just need to reorganize my screen because I accidentally drew on it. Let's just talk about what we've just done there. We've just experienced some different facilitation techniques to answer a particular question. All right, we've just chained together some techniques that demonstrates convergent and divergent thinking. We use a technique called worst possible idea. There's variations of that in the liberating structures space, that's called TRIZ. But this is a great way to get people warmed up. A lot of the time, many people are reluctant to share their thoughts, their ideas, in case they're perceived to be bad. People are feeling shy, they're worried about being judged. But by encouraging people to purposely think of bad ideas, we're kind of loosening them up. We're getting them more prepared to be comfortable with sharing their thoughts going forwards. So this is a good primer to get people ready for when we want them to generate good ideas, when we want them to contribute to the actual solution that we're looking for. We also used individual writing, so everybody was individually thinking about their own contribution on how they would answer the question. This is part of the divergence phase of convergence and divergent thinking. We used affinity mapping. We used it to organize all of the ideas. The individual writing meant that everybody was able to put ideas forward. So it wasn't about the loudest voice. It wasn't about the dominant personality. And the affinity mapping, again, allowed us to make neutral how we would organize the data. Anybody could move any card. It wasn't about, me as the coach, as the scrum master or a manager or anybody else. We all had the same level of authority to make changes to that affinity map. We reviewed the content quickly, and then we carried out a dot vote to decide what the best answer to the question was. That was our convergence phase. So this is a picture of that divergence and convergent process. This is taken from a book called The Facilitator's Guide to Participatory Decision Making. It was written by facilitation expert Sam Kainer. Sam was actually one of the foreword writers for the Facilitating Professional Scrum Teams book that we mentioned at the start. This picture is perhaps an oversimplification of convergent and divergent thinking and doesn't really represent what happens in reality. We're going to revisit this later and why facilitation is important for this sort of process. But the idea behind it is really important, and it's a popular approach, particularly for groups of people, because the idea is that we can leverage the diverse perspectives, the different experiences of a group of different people. We can explore competing ideas before we zero in on what we think is the best solution as a group. It's particularly useful when we're dealing with complex problems where the answer is not obvious. And again, this is why we want to facilitate a group of people through this process of divergence and convergence. Let's just take a little step to one side a second. Let me make sure that we're keeping up on their mule for those folks that are following us there. So this is the Scrum.org mission. Scrum.org we often call this the home of Scrum. Scrum.org was founded by Ken Schwaber, the co-creator of Scrum. And notice that the mission of Scrum.org is not about implementing Scrum. We're doing it for a purpose. Scrum is just a means to an end. And the end that Scrum.org talk about is we're trying to help people and teams to solve those complex problems, those difficult problems, those tricky problems where there's non-obvious solutions. So with that context, we got to think about how we can facilitate a Scrum team or a group of people to solve those complex problems. But what is facilitation? We often talk about coaching or teaching in the Agile space, but facilitation is a specific skill which is different from these other skills such as coaching, teaching, or maybe mentoring. Facilitation is about guiding a group of people to collectively and collaboratively building understanding of the problem, understanding of each other, understanding each other's ideas, and then to reach a common desired outcome. It's about getting towards the goal, the objective. To put it another way, this is the definition that Scrum.org have on the professional Scrum facilitation class that they run. Good facilitation enables transparency and collaboration, creates synergy, and leads to achieving a collective objective. So there's key words here: creating transparency, collaboration, synergy, and maybe most important of all, reaching that goal, that objective, trying to get to that outcome. So this is what we're trying to do with facilitation. This is what we mean by facilitation. Unfortunately, there is a lot of poor facilitation out there. We see a lot of poorly facilitated Scrum events, a lot of poorly facilitated meetings. And this can lead to all sorts of problems, all sorts of weak outcomes, poor results, we might call them. And why this might be the case? It could be because the meeting is ineffective because there are certain voices that dominate discussions, while other people, they feel that they're unable to contribute their thoughts. Maybe discussions go off in different directions, or they go off in different tangents. Maybe decisions are rushed and the group does not really buy into the decision being made, and we don't get that strong outcome that everybody is agreeing to. That's kind of what is shown in this cartoon here. Everybody seems to be aligned. There's the perception that everybody is raising their hand, yes, I agree, but really inside they're thinking, I don't really agree with this. We have a weak outcome again. We don't really have buy-in from the whole group. So these are some of the characteristics that we sometimes suffer from where meetings are facilitated ineffectively. Just want to share some data from some research into this area. This comes from some research that was published on ideas.ted.com. There's a link on the slide there at the bottom right. And this was an article called "The Economic Impact of Bad Meetings," based on, like I say, some research carried out. Some of the findings included things like 90% of people that were surveyed admitted that they daydream during meetings. So if you struggle to pay attention during a meeting, which, let's face it, a lot of us do, especially now that we're dealing with more virtual meetings, then you're not alone. So again, it's just part of being human. Other findings, 73% of the respondents admitted that they do other work during meeting time. Again, maybe this number has gone up as we're doing more of our meetings virtually. 34% of meetings were considered to be waste by the respondents. Waste of time, no real outcomes, didn't really achieve anything with them. And half of all the people in the research considered their meetings to be just generally unproductive. Finally, a quarter of meetings, according to the research, people felt that a quarter of meetings were spent discussing issues that were just not relevant. So perhaps this is unsurprising from the research that revealed that 3/4 of people that were surveyed who facilitate admitted or said that they have got no training on how to conduct an effective meeting. Many people may overestimate their ability to facilitate and lead effective conversations, and so we kind of get into this vicious circle that continues. Ineffective meetings can lack focus. We don't have an objective. There's not balanced participation. The timing is poor. And all of these things can cause people to become bored, be frustrated, and not really be aligned with the outcome of what even if there is an outcome, are people really aligned to it? So these are the sorts of problems that we're facing. The goal should not be to get rid of meetings, though. They're still needed. We still need ways for people to communicate effectively in groups. Really, this is about improving the quality of the ones that we really need. We want to make meetings effective so that we can reduce the need for unnecessary meetings. In Scrum, for example, we've got the Scrum events. The Scrum people, we talk about having the events that are designed to create regularity. Each one has got a purpose, and if we're doing Scrum well, it minimizes the need for other meetings. However, sometimes when the Scrum events are not run effectively, we end up having to build meetings on top of the Scrum events. And sometimes Scrum's got a reputation of being a little bit meeting heavy. Maybe the problem is that we're not really fulfilling their purpose as those events are designed for in Scrum. So what can we do about it? How can we move along from what we're seeing here? So do you remember the Scrum.org mission from earlier? We talked about the mission being all about solving complex problems. Scrum teams do this. One of the reasons why Scrum is designed as it is about utilizing the experience and diversity of a group of people. The diverse perspectives and experiences of a whole team brings different creativity, brings different innovation, because everybody's got something different to bring to the table. The Scrum events, the retrospective, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, the sprint planning, all of these, again, in Scrum, we talk about these as opportunities for inspection and adaptation. Inspecting how we're doing, inspecting our process, inspecting our products, making adaptations based on feedback, based on the knowledge of our team and beyond, utilizing all of our wisdom. For example, we've got the daily Scrum. This is for the developers. The purpose is for the developers to inspect their progress towards the current sprint goal and then adapt their sprint backlog. So this includes making a plan for the rest of the day, for the next 24 hours. But without effective facilitation, which is rooted in this purpose, the daily Scrum can become ineffective. It can turn into a status meeting. It can turn into an update for the Scrum Master or a project manager or a product owner. And we're losing the purpose, and we've missed the alignment that the team needs, which is the whole purpose of that daily Scrum. So again, that requires extra communication, maybe more meetings during the day. So what we're going to look at in this talk is some tips, some tricks, some ideas for how we can improve our meetings in Scrum events. These are based on some first principles of effective facilitation. So we're going to look at these principles first. So these are the core facilitation principles that we talk about from a facilitation stance. These are principles that have been adapted from a group of facilitation experts called ProMeet. Again, the website is on the slide there, so you can look them up afterwards. And we've got 5 main facilitation principles. I have updated the language here to kind of be a little bit more aligned with some of the things that we talk about in Scrum and Agile. But effectively, it's the same thinking behind them. So I'll go through these. We've got the participatory principle. So some might regard this as maybe the core principle, maybe the most important one. What we're looking for here is full participation. Why we want to do this, we want to try to create that sense of shared responsibility. This is not about making sure that everybody says something, but it's about creating the environment so that people feel engaged, involved, and they can have their say. And they feel that they have got a seat at the table, a part in the decisions that are being made. If people do not feel like a participant in a discussion and instead have ideas forced upon them, then they're going to be disengaged, demotivation, and their full participation is less likely in whatever we're trying to achieve, and in future meetings potentially as well. We've got the principle of healthy facilitation. So for this, we are looking for a healthy space. Don't get this confused with trying to avoid conflict, though. To a certain level, we do want to encourage and exploring conflicting perspectives. So we want to create that space to think about and discuss our different conflicting perspectives. As a facilitator, I'm aspiring to have a space where people feel like they can raise their different ideas, their different perspectives. They can disagree, they can share their opinions, but this needs to be done in a respectful way. It's about challenging the idea, not the personality. We kind of want to avoid that sort of conflict and focus it on focusing on the like I say, the ideas that are coming out rather than the sort of personalities and people behind them. So we need to instill that environment of respect. We want people to step back, build empathy, and learn from each other. Even if they don't agree, hopefully they can sort of understand and put themselves in each other's shoes a little bit. So this is about creating a safe space and building trust. And this is one of the reasons why facilitators need to maintain a level of neutrality as well. I'll talk about that more about that shortly. If we look at transparency, for me, the main aspect of transparency is about shared understanding. Sometimes we mix transparency up with visibility. Visibility helps create transparency, but ultimately transparency only exists when there's a shared understanding. So for example, I could have an artifact like, I don't know, a product backlog. I've got it in Jira. I've got it on a spreadsheet, wherever. People can access it, it's visible, but maybe if it's not designed in an accessible way, maybe the language that I'm using on my product backlog is alien to some people. People won't understand it. For me, that's a lack of transparency. So visibility does not automatically mean transparency. I'm also talking about transparency, not only of artifacts, but of the process, how decisions are made, how we are going to agree on the outcome together as a group. So it's not just transparency of artifacts, but the process as a whole. We've got the principle of purposeful. So good facilitation keeps the purpose and the objective of what we're trying to achieve in the forefront of everybody's mind. We want to be clear what the shared objective is that we're trying to collectively work towards. What is that shared collective objective? And then finally, the last principle is about process. This is not about following an agenda, but this is about the process of building that shared understanding, exploring the different ideas, the different thoughts from everybody's perspectives, and then converging on an outcome. That's premeditated on that idea generation, exploring different ideas as a starting point. But first of all, we need to generate them as well. So facilitating a process is about ensuring that we're guiding a group towards that desired objective. This might not always be a straight line. It might not be a linear process, and a good facilitator will recognize this. A good facilitator will adapt the process and trying to be as inclusive as possible, including the people that are maybe more introverted, the quieter voices, people that are more thoughtful, people that need time and space to absorb ideas. So facilitators need different approaches and techniques that encourage these different sorts of participation styles. We're trying to make sure that people are not excluded while finding ways to navigate and leverage that diverse perspectives that we've got within the team or the group. One thing to mention again, I'll probably say it more than once, but one important thing to think about is, again, you're facilitating the process, not the content. Good facilitators, again, are maintaining their neutrality, they're abstaining from judgment. So this is what this principle is about, facilitating the process. So with these principles in mind, let's have a look at some tips for improving our events and other meetings. First of all, I'm going to ask you for your ideas, your facilitation tips. If you could join me on the mural, I've got an activity space on number 17 on the mural board. I'm going to summon everybody there. If you're not there yet, I will bring this on screen. But my question, like I say, do you have any particular tips for facilitation that aligns with these different facilitation principles? I've got different columns here, one column for each facilitation principle. Have you got a facilitation tip that aligns with any of these principles? Add your thoughts to the board now. I'll put a little timer up, 2 minutes maximum on this. Okay, 1 minute left. If you are out of ideas, you can start just reading through what's on the board. Lots of good stuff coming out. Maybe a facilitation tip is don't do an online talk when you've got a squeaky chair. So apologies if you can hear my chair squeaking in the background. So I'm trying to sit still. All right, last few seconds. I can still see there's some post-it notes going, so get them in. Good, lots of good tips there. Yep. Just scroll through some of the ones that caught my eye. Serving fruit rather than cake for healthy facilitation. Literally healthy facilitation. But there's actually a good tip, right? If you've ever facilitated a group straight after lunch and they've had a heavy lunch, right? Energy levels are low. So again, making sure that there's good, healthy snacks that kind of keep people's energy levels up. So that's a good tip. Handle any attempt to belittle someone's views. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as a good facilitator, we might want to step in, take some action if people are crossing that line into unhealthy conflict. So that's an important one. What else have we got? We've got things here about avoid, this is quite a good one actually to mention. Have people at similar seniority avoid hippo problem. Yeah, you notice that's what we did with the facilitation techniques at the beginning. We're trying to give everybody the same sort of level of authority with the techniques that we're using. So with an open discussion, we might be looking at the manager, the CEO, and kind of looking to them, and that CEO can then sort of dominate everybody's thinking if we just run the facilitation with an open discussion. So using some of the techniques that we used earlier can be a way around it. What else have we got? Participatory. What else have we got? Keep people moving. That's a nice one. Yep. Keep the energy levels up. Keep people moving around. So yeah, that's good. Make it fun. Make it engaging. Keep them activities in small groups. Yep, that's good. Variety of group and individual activities. Yep, nice. Have cats visit mid-session. I think that might be an observation on David's tactic there. He's a cat as he has come to visit us. Yeah, animals. Yeah, never worked with children and animals. Yeah, so I'll leave that for you to experiment with. Transparency. Have rules of engagement for the team. Yeah, so a lot of teams that I work with will have a kind of like a team charter. This is how we expect to behave. This is our meetings times, our meeting start, end, kind of rules of engagement. This is how we make decisions. Those sorts of rules of engagement. So that's a good idea. Agenda, having clear agendas. Yeah. Walk the agenda at the beginning. Again, setting expectations. That's a nice one. Look at a couple of others. Purpose form. Know who you are going to facilitate before you start and what they want to achieve. Yep, good. Record the group's meeting goals on a wall chart. Yeah, so capturing those goals in a visible way, you can always refer back to it. You can point to it. That helps again if discussions are going off track, etc. What have we got under process? Be flexible. Don't be rigid in your planning. So yeah, that's definitely a good one for good facilitators to be aware of. And there's things around here around preparation, time boxing, etc. So yeah, lots of good tips and tricks. Again, the mural board will be available if you want to read through after the talk and beyond. So thank you for sharing your facilitation tips. Let me share some of mine. So number one is having a clear purpose. So I'll just ask you to follow me there on the mule. So what do we mean by this? So have you ever been in a meeting where you were confused about why you were there? I know I have. So often people set out to facilitate a session, but there's no clear goal. This can cause confusion, frustration. Why am I there? What's the expectations on me? But this could also apply to maybe parts of a meeting. So for example, a facilitator might decide to include an icebreaker or maybe a fun exercise. But is it really clear how they help the group make progress to the purpose, to the outcome? So when there's this sort of disconnect between what we're doing with the goal, we can kind of break that focus. So if I'm doing an icebreaker or I'm doing a get to know you activity, I'll try to theme it around what the purpose is. In my training classes that I run, if I'm running a Scrum class, my icebreaker might be people discussing in groups. What do you understand about Scrum? How, how would you define the Scrum Master accountability? I'm getting them to talk about something which is linked to the purpose, the subject, rather than sort of just a random fun activity that doesn't really sort of link that well to what we're actually trying to achieve from the interaction. When there is this disconnect, again, people can withdraw mentally from the goal that we're trying to achieve. So I don't want to kind of lose that from the start by doing those sorts of activities. Maybe there is a clear purpose, except not everybody is aware of it, or maybe they don't understand it. It's not been made transparent. So again, how can we make sure that this is clear? In very simple things like including it in the meeting invites or discussing at the beginning of the meeting or the Scrum event, reminding people of the purpose, maybe getting people to paraphrase it. So paraphrasing can be a facilitation technique. Like I say, just having it written down, writing it on a wall if we're in a physical meeting or on a virtual board for everybody to see. And that way we can always point back to it if things start to go off track. But good facilitation is about purposefully making sure that we are supporting progress towards the goal that we're trying to achieve for the interaction. Number 2 is about focusing on outcomes. So how many times have you been in a meeting and at one point you've kind of just checked out because there's been a long monologue or people kind of get into banter which is unrelated to the subject, or maybe there's just 1 or 2 dominant people that take the discussion off on a different tangent? Happens all the time, right? So one of the hardest parts of facilitation is letting people feel creative and experience that camaraderie in a group, but also keeping them focused on that purpose of the event. So an effective facilitator needs to have good judgment on when to adapt to the approach that they're using to keep everybody involved and focused on that subject. So the facilitator needs to gauge how much process they need to put in place to help guide the group. So adaptability is an important part of this. Perhaps one facilitation technique is not working. So this is not about having an agenda and following it strictly in terms of I'm going to use this technique, then that technique, then this. It's about why am I using these techniques? What am I trying to fulfill at this stage in the process? If one technique is not working, have I got a different one in my back pocket that I can bring out and use instead? Can I adapt? But also adapting to particular situations. Maybe before the meeting, the group got some really bad news. Maybe there's a notice of redundancies or a pay freeze or something like that. So a good facilitator will maybe abandon their original icebreaker and maybe do a sort of a check-in type technique where we're just going to talk about what's just happened, giving everybody a chance to get things off their chest. If I don't do that as a facilitator, people's attention might be elsewhere. I want to allow them to kind of talk about the things that they need to before I bring them back to the goal of what I want to achieve. So being adaptable is really important. So this tip is around using techniques that are lightweight, but being able to adapt as needed based on focusing on the outcomes. But also we need to have care for the human elements. But ultimately, like I say, it's about guiding people to that outcome that we're trying to achieve. As I mentioned, focus on the process and not on the content. So let me expand on this one a little bit more. So have you ever been in a meeting where the facilitator put forward their suggestions or their opinions, and you ended up being confused about their role? Are they facilitating, or are they telling us what we should do? Are they selling something to us? So this is where that point of neutrality is important. So we want, like I've been saying, we want the team to come together, so we're making the best use of their different experiences, their different ideas. So teams doing complex work thrive when there's a healthy and open environment where they can explore their ideas and respectively agree and disagree. And as a facilitator, I want to enable them to do that. And my opinion, I kind of have to hold that back a little bit. So if effective facilitation requires the facilitator to pay attention to group dynamics, the environment, but it's not about them pushing their own agenda, their own ideas. That's poor facilitation. And when this is not clear, this is going to cause confusion. We risk impacting transparency. What is that facilitator's agenda if they're behaving in this way? So take, for example, a sprint retrospective. One of the problems with the sprint retrospective with Scrum is, in most cases, is the Scrum Master who is facilitating it. But the whole point of the retrospective is everybody in the team should be contributing to the inspection and adaptation of the Scrum team's effectiveness. But the Scrum Master is part of that team. They should also be a participant. So there's this difficult balance of kind of being outside of the team, facilitating that process, but really they should be part of that discussion, part of how they can be effective. So we should recognize that facilitation doesn't always have to be the Scrum Master if we're doing Scrum. Maybe it's useful to bring somebody in from the outside who's neutral. Maybe rotate facilitation duties. It doesn't always have to be the Scrum Master. So we want to separate out that facilitation activity from participant. But if, for example, in that scenario, where somebody's playing that dual role, the least we can do is try to be transparent when you're playing both roles. And again, some of the techniques can help with that. Fourth tip is around driving to a decision. Can we get to that outcome? How do we get to that decision? So sometimes, I mean, how many times have you been in this situation? You've attended a great session, there's been lots of great discussions, but in the end, no decision was made. Or maybe there was an action agreed, but it wasn't really followed up. So again, this can happen with retrospectives where the team comes up with improvement actions, but nothing happens afterwards. They're not acted upon. Or we're getting to the end of the retrospective and the team is quickly scrambling around. Somebody chooses an improvement action on behalf of the entire team, and we say that's what we're going to do. But people haven't really bought into it. We've come up short there as a facilitator if we haven't got to that buy-in from everybody. People don't feel part of that decision. That's why it's not being actioned, because people don't feel ownership of it. So how can we get there? What we need to do is be transparent about how we are going to get to that decision on what we're going to do. So something we talk about in the training in the book is something called decision rules. How do we decide how we make a decision? For example, we used a dot vote at the beginning. That's a very fast way to get to a result, but I wouldn't use it for a higher stakes decision. I might want more debate, more exploration of different ideas. Maybe I could use a majority vote where I'd use a different technique, and the majority of people that go with it will carry the decision. Some decisions may be so important that I need unanimous agreement, but building this level of consensus means I need more exploration. I need more discussions. People need to make more trade-offs. This requires more time investments. So it's important as a team that we recognize the different types of the decisions that we need to make. What are the high stakes ones? What are the low stake ones? And again, that we are exploring appropriately and putting the right decision rules in place as appropriate. So how do we get to that decision? Lastly, last one is about creating shared responsibility. So this one is when people go along with a team decision or a group decision that they don't really agree with. Sometimes they later regret it, or like I say, they're not really behind what's been agreed. These experiences are common. They're quite typical in group dynamics. And there's always different levels of participation because of different people's personalities, the perception of status, their experience, their work background, the level of expertise. And like a theme of this talk has been, this diversity is actually a great thing. It's what enables creativity and development in teams, but it also creates tension and difficulty with group dynamics, getting people to agree, to understand each other. So when facilitating our Scrum events, our meetings, whether it's brainstorming or refinements, a good facilitator will make sure everybody's voice is represented. We're looking at different ways to build consensus, to build transparency, to build shared understanding. It's this shared understanding which can create buy-in. And I'm not just talking about understanding of ideas, but understanding of the process that we're following to get to the outcome that we're looking for. So that takes me back to this picture. We talked about divergent and convergent thinking earlier, and I did say that maybe what we saw earlier was an oversimplification. So I want to introduce you to this model. This is called the diamond of participatory decision making. This is from Sam Kaner's book again, who I mentioned earlier. So divergent and convergent thinking rarely happens in a smooth linear way. What this model shows is the complexity involved in divergence and convergence. If we are going to solve complex problems, we have to go beyond the obvious, the simple solutions. This requires deeper levels of thinking, and this can be challenging, especially for a group. Everybody's got their own thought processes, their own opinions, their own perspectives, and more often than not, people are not aligned at the same time. And this can lead to misunderstandings and frustrations. This is what Sam Kaner calls the groan zone. This is this difficult period where people are arguing, people are attached to their idea, they're not really listening to others. And this is the facilitation challenge. Can we help a group navigate through the groan zone? Can we help them build understanding and empathy for each other? Before we start to converge on an outcome, do we actually understand each other's perspectives first? So facilitation techniques can help with this, but it's about using the right facilitation technique given where we are in this process. Also falling back on the facilitation principles that we've mentioned. Now, I've not mentioned that many techniques. This was not a talk about facilitation techniques. I wanted to get across the kind of fundamentals of facilitation first. It's all well and good learning lots of facilitation techniques, but it's about the why and the how of when to apply them. I'd like to hear last interaction activity, number 25 on the mule. Let's talk about some facilitation techniques and tools. Add the facilitation techniques and tools that you use or that you've heard of on the mule. We are on number 25 on the mule board. Add your thoughts there. Yeah, get people moving around, brainstorming. Cake is making another reappearance. Yep. Open questions. Mixing people up, yep. Using, yeah, flip charts, visuals, that's good. Facilitate dielectric and dialogic engagements. Cool. Nice. If we've got time in the Q&A, that might be a good question. What do we mean by dielectric and dialogic engagement? Use of whiteboards, post-it notes. Yeah, absolutely. Where would it be without post-it notes? Lots of good stuff there. I'm just going to share on screen Just a sample set of facilitation techniques. You might have heard of some of these. I've kind of put them into random categories. This is just me putting them into categories. These are just some samples. I'm not going to go through all of them. But for example, we used worst possible idea at the start of this session to connect you to the subject of facilitation. We used silent writing. If I want people to connect to the goal, maybe I'm developing a product and I want my team to really buy into my vision, I might use something like an elevator pitch or a product vision box. In terms of building empathy with my customers, my users, or maybe with even each other as a team, I might be using things like an empathy mapping or personal mapping. Again, I don't expect you to know what these are, but maybe these are things that you can go look up after the talk. We used affinity mapping for organizing our data, but other visualization techniques, there's loads of different canvases out there. Lean UX Canvas, Roman Pichler is a great resource for like product goal canvases, product management canvases. He's got lots of good stuff there. So lots of different types of canvas for visualizing and allowing people to just look at content and data to understand what's going on. Gallery, walk, shift, and share. This is about having data available and just giving people time and space to explore for themselves. Let them look at the data. Let them look at those visualizations. All sorts of techniques to enable people to explore, think about, brainstorm, generate options, critique ideas. So there's something called 6 thinking hats. There's a technique from Liberating Structures, which is one quite a popular one called 1, 2, 4 all. World Cafe, I use that one quite a lot for if you've got really big groups, you've got a lot of complex questions to answer. You might use a World Cafe, which involves breaking people up into smaller groups and rotating them around, and the different groups discuss the different questions in turn. So there's different formats of that. Lean Coffee, Crazy Eights, that's a great technique for generating ideas. And I talked about how to make decisions, so your decision rules. So we saw a dot vote, there's other forms of voting, Roman voting, fist of fives, decision matrices. That's a nice way to visualize your key criteria to help your team or your group make decisions. So again, lots of different facilitation techniques out there. They are discussed in more depth in lots of different sources. So just pointing out these sources are a good place to go and look for more information on particular facilitation techniques. Liberating Structures, game storming I've mentioned, and there's a website called tastycupcakes.org as well. That's a good resource. And that's just this is just a sample among many. Before we finish, I want to leave a couple of final thoughts here. Hopefully, as we've explored the subject of facilitation, we're recognizing that this is a unique skill that we should be nurturing and developing to get the best out of our teams and our organizations. Whether you're new to facilitating, you're developing your skills, we should be recognizing that facilitation plays an important part in helping people to achieve their goals as a collective. So the next time that you're facilitating, I'm hoping that maybe you'll keep some of the points from tonight in mind. The points around being purposeful, having a purpose, creating a participative environment which is healthy, making sure that people are feeling safe to engage, learn, and collaborate. If you are keen and curious about learning more, there's many free resources out there. The scrum.org website has got lots of blogs and other resources about facilitation. If you do want to take your facilitation skills to another level, there is the Professional Scrum Facilitation Skills Training class, which was launched by scrum.org last year. So this is about facilitation in a Scrum context. So maybe you need some help with facilitating Scrum events. And again, in the training, you get to practice some of the facilitation techniques, some of the ones that I've mentioned. And before I finish as well, I will make another mention of the book, Facilitating Professional Scrum Teams. In this book, we talk about real life scenarios, real world problems that teams and organizations face where facilitation might help. So we frame it around different scenarios, and then we talk about different options that you've got for facilitation. There are around about 80 different facilitation techniques and tools that we discuss in that book. We've tried to make it highly practical, so hopefully there are some goodies in there that can help you develop your facilitation skills and knowledge. Thank you so much for your attention tonight. Hopefully you got some value out of the talk tonight, and I think we've got time for some questions.
Yeah, thank you, David. That was really good. Lots of valuable information in there. I've just had a look through the chat. There's a bunch of questions in there. Let me just scroll through, see if I can find some of the earlier ones. Okay, here's one. Martin Bramley, would you like to ask your question? Or shall I read it out?
Yeah, sorry, just finding out how to unmute. Yeah, I think it's quite a simple question, but what happens when the facilitator is the hippo? I mean, I run an agile team, and we all end up doing some facilitating at different points, but sometimes, it is the hippo who is the facilitator.
Again, I think the first thing to do is just be transparent about it. I'm here to facilitate. I do have the capacity of whatever it is. You've got to make that choice. Are you going to leave that at the door? Are you going in as a participant with that title that you're bringing in? Or are you going in saying, I'm purely here to facilitate? So making that decision beforehand and making that transparent when you go into the group. And then using the right techniques. What's your purpose of that interaction, that meeting? What do you want to get out of it? And what techniques are you going to employ so that the group is empowered to drive those discussions themselves? We've used a few there, so getting people to silently write by themselves. The 1, 2, 4 all technique is a very fast way to get people talking to each other. And again, it's about you facilitating that process. You're explaining the technique, the expectations, and making it clear that you're not putting your opinion out there, because that's not what you're there for. If you are going to play that dual role, again, making it clear, we're going to use a 1, 2, 4 technique. I'm going to take part. I'm going to be one of the team members. I'm going to be in one of the groups. I'm going to be participating with my job title. Yeah, like I say, just making that clear from the outset, I think, is important. Does that help?
I think so. Yes. Yeah, I think I've got a follow-on question, because a lot of the times when I do facilitation, I'm trying to do it in a time-boxed way. And it's quite interesting how you sort of said, try not to rush to a decision.
Yeah.
But again, we try and minimize the amount of meetings.
Yeah.
So I'm I see a challenge where I'm trying to sort of get a decision made in 30 minutes.
Yeah. Again, there's always that balance, and I think sometimes, especially, I've seen it with some Scrum Masters, they'll kind of be there with a timer, like Daily Scrum. This is a real example. I've seen a Scrum Master turn up to the Daily Scrum with a timer. Right, Daily Scrum is starting, 15 minutes start. And as soon as the 15 minutes goes up, they will stop the meeting. 15 minutes is up, everybody leave. And they've kind of cut it short. Is it the end of the world if that team goes over by an extra 2 minutes to finish that point that they were making? Personally, I think there'd be more value to break the time box rule than not. So the time boxes are there for a purpose, to keep focus. So it's always about that balance. Obviously, we can't let a daily meeting go on for like 40 minutes, because there's a different problem there. So again, it's being really clear around how is getting that balance of, and this is why a lot of the facilitation techniques can help, because it's creating that laser focus. And this is why things like an open brainstorming, an open conversation, can just end up in long meandering conversations. If you look at, like I've mentioned, 1, 2, 4 all, there's something called Troika Consult. All of these techniques, they are designed to bring focus and try to get to the outcome in a fast and efficient manner, but without cutting too many corners. It's about quality conversations as well.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Okay, let's have a look. So Jan posted an interesting graphic, an image, a little chart of something, decision methods. If you're online, Jan, it'd be great to ask you to share how that connects with today's session, and because it looks quite interesting. Has he done it? We can come back to that. Let's see. All right, Stephen Booth, you asked a question regarding the WorldCaf. Would you like to say it out? I'll read that one out.
There's been a lot of mention of coffee and cake tonight, hasn't it? So
Yeah,
we need to talk about World Cafe.
yeah, lean coffees, WorldCaf, and cake. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So it says, WorldCaf, can it be difficult to organize? Is it very good for groups that come from different parts of the business?
World Cafe. Okay, so facilitation is not just about running the meeting itself or the interaction, it's about preparation and follow-up as well. World Cafe, I think the key in it is the preparation, making sure that you've got a good space, whether that's physical or virtual. So making sure that the tooling is good if you're going virtual. So a good tool like Zoom, a good whiteboarding tool like Mural. You've set up a template, you've thought about the questions that want to be answered, and again, when you start the meeting, just making how it's going to work really clear. But I've actually done World Cafe as a kind of presentation workshop at a conference. So literally people walking into the room ready to go, never having seen a World Cafe before, or never having seen the questions that I'm asking before. But I've put the preparation work in so that I can kind of hit the ground running when they join. And again, it's about being really organized and disciplined around, like I say, time boxing, making sure there's good materials, etc. So yeah, preparation is a big part. What was the other part of the question? I think it was around a big group of people, right? Yes, yeah, that's what it's designed for, basically. If I've got like dozens of people, I've got the way that World Cafe works briefly, maybe I've got 100 people, maybe I've got 5 key questions that I want answering. I'm going to have 5 different areas or 5 tables if I'm doing it physically, breaking that group down into smaller subgroups. Each group is going to a table. They're going to explore the question or the problem for a short time box, shortish, up to you, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then at the end of that time box, the facilitator will signal and the group will then rotate to the next question. And the key to it is people are taking notes, they're making doodles, whatever it is, they're capturing their thoughts as they're having the discussions. And as people are rotating around, they're looking at what the last group or groups have left behind, and then they're building upon it. So everybody gets to sort of contribute to all of the questions, but they're kind of done it in these broken down groups. That's kind of it in a nutshell. There's more to it, but yeah, it's there's a website on World Cafe if you want to know more.
Sure. Okay. There was a question about double diamond approach, and so I thought it was quite interesting. Does design thinking kind of relate to how you kind of your approach to facilitation?
Yeah. When I do work with teams or organizations, I'm kind of using a combination of different things. So there's ideas from design thinking. There's a lot of facilitation techniques, some of which I've mentioned tonight. Some of them are in the book, some of them in the class. A lot of them originated from the design thinking space as well. So there's definitely a lot of overlap between some of what we're talking about, design thinking, liberating structures. If you drew a big Venn diagram, there'd kind of be a big sort of bit in the middle where there's a lot of overlap between these things. So yeah, definitely design thinking approaches come into this.
Cool. All right. Evie, would you like to ask your question? Okay, I'll read it out. How do you handle conflicts or disagreements, and what strategies do you use to promote collaboration and consensus?
All right. This is a big question that we get a lot on some of our training classes. First of all, you need to understand the nature of conflict. If conflict goes beyond a certain level, you can't actually manage it. We talk about managing conflict. So really, we need to prevent it reaching that level in the first place. If it goes beyond that certain level, if it gets the the really high levels of conflict, maybe I'm at the point where these people can't even work together. I need to prevent them from getting there in the first place. So a very effective facilitation technique, very simple: have a break, get coffee, eat cake. We kind of get into some of the human psychology here, but there's definitely something to it. We think with our emotions first usually. So that buying that little bit of time break, putting that little break in, will help people sort of get their emotions out and start engaging the more logical part of their mind. So there's that technique as well. As a facilitator, I need to be cognizant of the group dynamics. Are people criticizing the ideas, the opinions? Are they having healthy conflict? And I'm looking out for when people start making personal attacks. If that's what's starting to come out, that's where the line is starting to be crossed. I need to take some action to avoid that.
Cool. Okay, so there's a question from Wei Hei Chu. Would you like to ask your question? Shall I read it out?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, just any tips on how to focus on the incidents and not to be personal, in the learned lessons. What I'm trying to say is, for example, if we, facilitate a lesson learned sessions, normally, we raise, communication skills, someone particularly not very good at it, or they're not listening to the requirements, causing issues and things like that. So how can I avoid, trying to be too personal on things like that?
Oh, as a facilitator, okay, yeah. I always like to. This is something that I try to talk to and to teams about, and maybe individuals and teams, and it's kind of like a continual message. We talk about impediments in our space a lot, but we should never label individuals as an impediment. It's a thing. It's a behavior. So I try, if I see someone saying, "Oh, I'm just going to pick on Ahmad. Ahmad is blocking us. He's impeding us for this reason," right? I want to reframe that conversation. No, Ahmad isn't blocking us. Ahmad's availability is a problem, or Ahmad's the way that he's expressed his idea is impeding it. So I'm trying to bring it to the behavior and not the person. So I'll try to get people to sort of reframe how they are raising their criticisms as critiques of the behavior of the idea, not the person.
Yeah, I think that's the difficulty to rephrase what other people think or say in the session.
Yeah. So there's a technique that we call paraphrasing. So it's like, what I'm hearing is this. Is this what you mean? And I would paraphrase it in that way that I've just described.
Okay, right. Yeah,
especially if I hear something like say Ahmad. Sorry, I'm picking on Ahmad, but Ahmad is an impediment. Okay, I might step in and say, right, okay, let me paraphrase. What I'm hearing is this, and I will paraphrase it in that. I'll use that language.
Yeah, because I found that is one of my issue, because again, I think English is not my first language. I tend to be quite direct and straight to the point.
Yeah. There's definitely sort of cultural aspects to this as well to be aware of. But that's a whole different sort of talk on.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Wei. All right, we have a question from Alison Aquino. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, so we had this experience where like we had a workshop and the participants was basically saying, I have no respect for these kind of workshops and I don't feel like joining in. I'm just gonna listen in, or like something like I don't have time for this. So how do you kind of like deal with that scenario?
I've managed to go for nearly an hour and a half, and I haven't said it depends yet. But I will give you an elaboration on this. It depends. First of all, what I'm thinking is why are they there? Why does the group need them there? Why do you need them there as a facilitator? What do I need? Is it actually okay that they're there as an observer, or do I actually need for example, if I'm thinking about the sprint review in Scrum, all right, do I need this person there because I need their feedback? I actually need their opinion. Are they an important stakeholder? Okay. How I handle that is going to be very different from a different type of stakeholder. Well, actually, I don't mind them being an observer. They can come to the sprint review as an observer. That's fine. So really, this is about understanding the need for them to be there. And if it is one of those key stakeholders, then we're kind of into coaching conversations around, we need you here because of this or that. But maybe it goes back to, it's not clear what the purpose is. If they're not aligned with the purpose, maybe that's why they don't need to be there or not. So I kind of bring it back to that tip. Are they clear on what we're trying to achieve? Are they aligned with it? And if they don't feel that they're part of that, maybe actually they don't need to be there. But yeah, without getting into the specifics, I think that's all I can offer at the moment.
Okay, that's one. I think we're coming close towards the end now. I think let's do one more question. Tom Gilb, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, it's in the chat. Do you apply quantification of critical stakeholder values and qualities as a means of clarification of goals?
Okay, I'm just absorbing that one. I'm not sure I entirely understand what the question is. Could you elaborate a little bit? Apply quantification of critical stakeholder values.
Yeah, if somebody says we need more security, then the question is how much more security of what type and when? And one way of handling part of that question is to say we need to move from 80% hacker discovery to 95%. That's a quantification of the security goal. And that clarifies what the goal is.
Okay. So I'm just thinking critical stakeholder values and qualities as a means of clarification. Oh, okay. I think I understand what you mean. Okay. I don't want to say it depends again in twice in a row. But yeah, I think for me, a good goal should be something which is potentially measurable. So yeah, do you apply quantification of critical stakeholder values? And yeah, why not? Why not? Sometimes, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Yeah, let's just wrap up now. Just want to thank everyone for attending, for your participation. I think the information we've collected on the mural boards, it's just fantastic. So many great takeaways on there. So thank you all for that and your contributions. Thank you, David. Really good session. So a lot of value in there as well. We've recorded this session as well, so it'll be available through the Eventbrite link. What we usually do is we'll post it out through the Eventbrite probably a week or so after this event, so you'll all get it. If you're new or if you're a non-member of the BCS, I'll just pop in a link to our BCS group. You can just read up on us and our future events. Okay, and David, would you be okay to share the slides and the PDFs for the murals?
Yeah, no problem. Yep, I will
and
ping them over.
Are people welcome to connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can share my screen quickly. I'm very easy to find, so I must be one of the very first David Spinkses on LinkedIn. There is another David Spinks who has written books in the business space. So, but yeah, that's me. Yeah, LinkedIn.
Perfect.
David-Spinks.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Let's call it a night for now. Hopefully see you all at our next session. Thank you again, David. And everyone, have a great evening.